Now let's look at the Create New API Endpoint form. This is where you define custom API endpoints beyond the standard CRUD operations. The form starts with the name field. This is the name of your endpoint, something like login, register, or apply discount. Next to it is the API endpoint method dropdown, and you have 5 options: get, post, put, patch, and delete. These map directly to standard HTTP methods. Get is for fetching data, post is for creating or submitting data, put is for fully replacing a record, patch is for partially updating a record, and delete is for removing a record. Now here's where it gets interesting. When you select post as your method, you get an additional option: create resource on post method. This checkbox tells Jeerokode whether this post endpoint is meant to create a new database record or if it's just a post request that does something else, like a login endpoint which posts credentials but doesn't necessarily create a new resource. You also get a post handler text area, and this is a really thoughtful feature. This is where you write a comment or description explaining what this endpoint is supposed to do. For example, for a login endpoint you might write validate user credentials, verify password hash, generate JWT token and return it with user details. These comments are not just for documentation, they can also guide AI coding agents when the code is being generated, helping them understand the intent of the endpoint and implement the logic correctly. Then we have the root field. This is the actual URL path of your endpoint, something like auth login or users reset password. Next is pagination shape, and this comes into play for get endpoints. You have 3 options: single item which returns just one record, paginate which returns a paginated list where you can control how many items appear per page, and all which returns every record without pagination. Choosing the right pagination shape is important for performance. You don't want to return thousands of records at once when a paginated response would work much better. Then we have select columns to keep logs. This lets you choose which specific columns should be logged when this endpoint is called, useful for audit trails and debugging. Page title for this endpoint is the human-readable title that will be used in the frontend for this route. Success message is the message that gets returned to the user when the endpoint completes successfully, something like login successful or password reset email sent. And finally, under behaviors we have cache endpoint. When checked, the response of this endpoint will be cached, which is great for endpoints that return data that doesn't change frequently, improving your application's performance significantly. For our e-commerce application we'll be creating several custom endpoints: register, login, reset password for the user model, apply coupon for orders, and process payment for payments, each with their own method, route, and handler description. Let's go ahead and start creating these now.